The Dave LewAllen Podcast is sponsored by Sherm's Candy, a Michigan-based company that specializes in awesome-tasting candy that's in the shape of Michigan. And welcome back to the Dave LewAllen Podcast. We cover sports stories, newsmakers, and difference makers in our community and across the state of Michigan. We're on YouTube, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts as well, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and happy to have you joining us today to talk today with a former Detroit Lions player, had a 15-year career in the NFL after Detroit, after his college playing days at Eastern Michigan, moved on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He grew up in Pennsylvania and had a long career with the Steelers as well. Super Bowls, you name it. Perfect guy to talk to as we're into the NFL playoffs. Charlie Batch joins us today on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. Charlie, great to see you. Thank you for this time. And the Steelers season ended sooner than, the organization and the players and the coaches would have wanted. Lions are still playing. From your own experience, you know how special a time of year this is.
Oh, it really is. And this is, it's kind of bittersweet because you root for the Lions, but also, here I am with the Steelers as well as I do TV and radio with them, covering them. But this is really the second time, last year being the first, that this is the longest. I've been rooting for the Lions 1 week longer than the Steelers because the Steelers were knocked out and the Lions continued to play. So it's exciting time on both sides. But when you get to this particular point of the season, it's ring season. You throw everything out there. It's not about the divisions. It's about completing the task at hand. And the goal is to win that Super Bowl, hoist that Lombardi trophy. And I've been able to be part of 3 Super Bowl teams, but winning 2 of those and understanding what that experience is, man, it's a beautiful thing, especially for the fan base as you start kind of winding down and a single elimination tournament and you're one of the last people standing and we're able to accomplish that goal. It means a whole heck of a lot.
And we'll get into more of your experiencing those things. But let's talk about this Lions team because, you spent 4 years here as the starting quarterback after being drafted in the second round in 98, I guess, right? 98?
Yes.
Yeah. So, this team has never been to the Super Bowl, never won the Super Bowl, got close last year. From afar now, because of your past affiliation, you do root for the Lions, don't you?
No, absolutely. It's not because they're in the NFC, so it's not like you're playing them every single year. You play them every 4 years, based off the way the divisions and everything go now. But when you root for them, or you get a chance because now they're playing a lot more primetime games, so you get a chance to see those. And then, of course, you do have former players that I've played with up there. You have Antoine Randall, who was in Pittsburgh with me, Deshae Townsend. We've been able to win Super Bowls together there. So I had a chance to see those guys in August when actually the preseason game happened up there. So really good just to catch up, follow them. And then, of course, anytime of success that you're having, man, you're just excited because it's been a long time coming for that fan base.
So as you watch this Lions team, what are your impressions about what they have accomplished, this season certainly, but even back to last year when they had the run to the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I love the aggressiveness that Dan Campbell brings to the equation. You can see everybody they are feeding off the leadership and the culture that he's trying to bring into that Lions organization, and everybody is bought in. And when you have somebody like a Jared Goff who is running the offense and in the manner that he is, yeah, he has a chip on his shoulder. Dan had a chip on his shoulder. You can just kind of see it trickling down. And when I say a chip on his shoulder, because anybody who gives up on you in the manner that the Rams did, they trade you away and you're the number 1 pick. Guess what? That means you still have to go out there and prove something regardless of what you accomplish. And when you come up short in the Super Bowl in the manner that Goff did, you move on to a new team. You have him on the brink last year of getting to that Super Bowl. And right now, everything goes through Detroit. You better believe he's playing for something. He got the contract. That's out the way. Now it's proving that he can turn around and take another team to the Super Bowl and eventually hoist that Lombardi trophy, something that he came up short with. And I'm just excited to watch the growth and maturation of what he's bringing to the equation, because I was a big fan of him back when he was in LA, and of course now having the opportunity to run the show here in Detroit, and man, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
He has been consistent and he has been remarkably efficient as well. But he's got some weapons, around him as well that make it a little bit easier for him, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing. Everybody loves to throw the football. Your receivers, they love you, for getting them the ball. But ultimately, you have to have some of the pressure taken off of you. And when you're able to turn around and hand that football off, knowing that an offensive line is going to open up a hole, and you can now, gain 8 yards on first down, or maybe hit that big run that they've been able to do, it takes the pressure off you, and the defense don't know kind of what to focus on, because you're not a one-dimensional team. And anytime you get the running game going, that opens you up the play action game, and that's where he's pushing that football down the field. And you're talking about scoring them, going 80 yards in 5 plays, because you're able to hit those chunk plays in the manner that they are. And those are things that just makes you scary when you look back, because you can score from anywhere on the field, and Detroit has proven that.
Yeah, boy, they have. They put up some big numbers for sure. Now, they've had a lot of injuries, as you know, on the defense, and yet they've been able to plug guys in and still outscore opponents enough, to have the regular season that they had, and to now be ready to hopefully extend this run into and through the playoffs. Pretty remarkable coaching job, and by Dan Campbell and that staff. And you mentioned Antoine Randall L. as well, part of that staff.
Yeah, and I think when you look back, and of course, injuries are a part of the game. It's just a matter of how you manage them. But again, that's, when you look back, that's the front office job, to make sure that you have depth at each position just in case an injury occurs. And Detroit has proven that with the amount of injuries that they had on the defensive side of the ball, especially when people were projecting them, trading, possibly for, a defensive end when Adrian Hutchinson went out with an injury. That was a big deal there, but yet they've been able to plug along to get to that point. And I always say, when you're going through a season, you have to have some luck involved. Injuries are a part of that, but also getting hot at the right time. And when you see where Detroit is at, and the way that they've been able to manifest things that they've been able to do, every time that there's been a question mark, they've been able to answer it. Injuries, overcoming that. Okay, strength of schedule, overcoming that. You only can play the people who are on your roster. So when you start to see all the sexy stories that are around, you only focus on what's in the building. And that's one of the things that coaches always stress upon. Don't worry about the outside noise. If we handle our business, the rest of it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And right now, Detroit is proving that, because you handled business when everybody was high on the Vikings. You beat them when it mattered, and ultimately secured that number 1 seed. And when you have home field, man, Detroit is always a tough place to play. And people have recognized that over time, especially when you're playing on Thanksgiving. But now, having the opportunity to prove that you're the number 1 seed, and now have everything run to Detroit, it's going to be a very tough place to play. And those fans are electric anyway. And now you're giving them a reason, because the Super Bowl is on the brink. Something that haven't been talked about consistently over the year, but Dan Campbell has been able to do that back-to-back years, as having this team ready to rock and roll, and everybody's excited.
Yeah, and it's been a long time in coming, 1957. The last time the Lions won a championship, and yes, to kind of be on the verge of potentially some great things, some historic things happening. Ford Field has been electric, and boy, it's going to be throughout the playoffs here.
Oh, absolutely. And it just takes me back during my time in Detroit. We had the opportunity to have AFC championship games, through. Whether that was 2004, 2008, 2010. So when you had that, and just know how much it means to be able to do so. We won the Super Bowl. We went on the road and won a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 40, which we went on the road and then ultimately played the Super Bowl in Detroit. But when you have it at home, it's a different feeling. Your schedule doesn't change. You don't have to worry about traveling. Your family's all there. Everybody's on a schedule, and everything is familiar to you. Meaning, when you're playing at home, you're in the home locker room, right? You understand what game day looks like for you. But ultimately, you're practicing at home. You're not leaving, and it just your schedule doesn't change, and that routine doesn't change. And this is a different opportunity for this Lions team only because last year they had to go on the road to get to that point. But when you are here and knowing that you have 2 games, and if you win those 2 home games, you are playing in the Super Bowl, it changes the whole dynamics of what these playoffs mean.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about what these playoffs mean to a player. And as we mentioned, you've been there, played in part of the team that was in 3 Super Bowls with 2 Super Bowl wins. Talk to me about, I guess those groups are special, and teams change from year to year, personnel somewhat, but to have a team that comes together, that plays, well enough to have the success to go on a playoff run, to go to Super Bowls, to win Super Bowls. As a player, what does that feel like? What does that take, within the locker room and on the field for these things to happen?
Yeah, the intensity, is going to be raised when you're in the playoffs. Everybody talks about that, but you also want to take on the personality of the head coach. And if the head coach is always calm, he delivers his message, you go out there and do those type of things that you believe in because it worked during the regular season, you don't have to change as much when you get to the playoff. You just focus on minimizing the mistakes that occurs throughout the course of a game. So when being able to take that mentality with Bill Cowher in Super Bowl 40, right? We weren't supposed to be there. It was one of those things to where, hey, we're playing with house money. And it really for me, it was that end of the season because, everybody talked about Jerome and being, going out on his last year, Jerome Bettis. We played Detroit in the final week of the season, and we were looking to rest all of our starters and those type of things. But Detroit played us well all the way into the fourth quarter, and ultimately we won it at the end. But that game, I credit that game for getting us ready for the Super Bowl run because we had to now play against the Bengals, going on the road to beat them as a division winner. Then we went to Indianapolis, beat the number 1 seed and then beat the number 2 seed in Denver to be able to play the number 1 seed in Seattle up in Detroit at Ford Field for the Super Bowl. But when you have all of those players, literally nobody on that team won a Super Bowl. So we were all going through it together. So we didn't have anything to compare it to. We were just young, having fun, with the goal in mind of winning that Super Bowl. But then when you move forward in a couple years later in Super Bowl 43, it was, we were a little older, so we knew what to expect. So it was, that process going through it. Now it was our job to teach those younger guys or new guys who'd never been through it what to expect. And when you go through that and being able to hoist that Lombardi trophy, it's a beautiful thing because, it's not, I wouldn't say you take it for granted. You're like, okay, that's the next ring. But you look at the reactions of the new guys that were there and hoisting that Lombardi trophy for the first time and how excited they are to be a part of it. And all you do is go to them and say, that's why you came here. You come here to win championships. And it's just watching that and the excitement that happens. And that's where you are right now when I watch Detroit. You're kind of young. There's not a lot of people with that Super Bowl experience. So they're all sharing it. But when you have the nucleus of the team, understanding that disappointment and that empty feeling that you had lost last year when you lost to the 49ers, you're coming in a lot more motivated, right? It's like we're not taking anything for granted because the details matter. And when you get to that particular point, it's beautiful. And and that's why I get excited, to talk about the Super Bowl runs and people going through it for the first time. And then ultimately where we were as veterans in that particular space, those things, you never miss because right now it's ring season. I don't wear my Super Bowl rings, a lot. But when it comes to this particular point, you got to pull it out every once in a while to let people know, yeah, I'm a part of that. And then it makes it a lot more meaningful when you do go to the Super Bowl and you're walking around because you are part of history when you can wear that Super Bowl ring. And that's why people are excited because people are fans of Detroit fans. They've been waiting for this for a long time, like you mentioned, 1957. And you better believe if they could figure out a way to get to New Orleans, man, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of Honolulu blue and gray. I can tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Charlie Batch joining us on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. We're going to talk more about Charlie, his time in Detroit, played at Eastern Michigan in college, came to the Lions as a second-round draft choice. We'll get into some of that. And the work he does in his community of greater Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania as well on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. First, though, have a sweet tooth and a love for Michigan? Sherm's Candy is the perfect place to satisfy both. They specialize in delicious candies, all shaped like the Mitten State itself. Choose from classic Michigummies for a delightful taste of gummy goodness, or if you're looking for a richer flavor experience, indulge in decadent chocolate Michigummies. And for those who prefer a tart and tangy treat, pucker up for sour Misha gummies. Sherm's Candy doesn't forget about your furry friends either. They offer Misha Pups, a tasty treat made just for dogs. Many fine retailers across Michigan carry Sherm's Candy, or you can order online at shermscandy.com. Thrilled to have Sherm's Candy along as a sponsor of the Dave LewAllen Podcast. Thrilled to have Charlie Batch join us today. Drafted, as we mentioned, out of Eastern Michigan by the Lions, second round in the 1998 NFL Draft. Played 4 seasons in Detroit. Started 46 of 48 games as the starting quarterback. Charlie, in your time here, that Lions team wasn't what this Lions team is now. It was that period of time where they were trying to find, the right mix, the right answers. As you reflect on your 4 years in Detroit as a member of the Lions, what are the, memories that come flooding back to you?
Yeah, for me, grateful for the opportunity, that Detroit have given me in the National Football League, drafted me in the second round, moving just down the street from Eastern Michigan. So not much has changed for me there. But then going in and just trying to prove yourself that you belong and you're trying to earn a roster spot and understanding the business of the NFL. But then you're just waiting for your opportunity. And that happened in my third game of the season against Minnesota. We were up in Minnesota. Of course, things didn't go our way as we lost that game. But it was just one of those things that you want to be thrown into the fire. And for me, having that opportunity to learn, I always say baptized by fire, right? You're going in there and learning and don't have the luxury to sit, that helped me throughout the course of my career because the game started slowing down. You're playing and you're just trying to continue to go out there and do it. And, we wanted, you get to that point where you make a playoffs, you're 8-8, you're 9-7, trying to get over that hump. But when you don't do it and ultimately changes are made in the front office, those type of, they have to make decisions. And for me, it wasn't about the ability to play. It was about the ability to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to do that. So I don't fault anybody else. I have to take responsibility of that. But ultimately, they had to make a decision. They moved on. And I had a great 4 years up there, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And then from there, I had that's when I ended up in 2002 moving forward to Pittsburgh.
Well, and that being, your home state and home area, I guess it was a perfect fit for you, and you spent years there, and primarily, certainly as the backup quarterback, but someone who was an important player in the mix of a team that had an awful lot of success in the years that you were there. And we mentioned the Super Bowls and the Super Bowl wins. Wow, things couldn't have worked out any better in that way, right, Charlie?
Yeah, and I always say, I have the luxury of I only know 2 cities, really, and that's Pittsburgh and Detroit. And not many people can play 15 years and say you only know 2 cities, right? So for me, growing up here in Pittsburgh and then having the opportunity to go to Eastern Michigan, playing my years there, I spent 9.5 years in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And then when I get back to Pittsburgh, this is my 23rd year now back in Pittsburgh. And a lot of people, it's funny because a lot of people up there will call me and they say, "Hey, Charlie, when you coming back home?" And I'm like, "I am home." And they're like, no, when you come back to Detroit. And I said, "You do realize I'm from Pittsburgh?" And they're like, "No, I thought you were one of us. Yeah. I thought you were a Michigander." And I'm like, "No." I said, "But it is my second home." And I, growing up there, having an opportunity to go from a young man to an adult to a man, essentially a young kid to a man.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And then having the opportunity to come back home and now being here. And when I say I'm home, I'm home. Mm-hmm. And people are like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm literally 15 minutes from the practice facility of the Pittsburgh Steelers." And people are just like, "Wow." So, it was good and bad being home, right? The good part, I was home. The bad part was, everybody wanted tickets and you couldn't accommodate it. And it was tough during that way because you go from, being at the Silver Dome where it's 80,000 seats and we would sell out 72,000 tickets, but then there's 8,000 remaining. So players can get as many as they wanted at that particular point because that was one of the largest stadiums in the country. And to go from 80,000 to now 64,000 in Pittsburgh, now tickets aren't there quite like they were in Detroit. So a lot of people were upset, but again, it goes That's just what it is, when you're a hot ticket item from that particular perspective. But also, I got spoiled too in being in Detroit, because every game that we played home was 72 degrees in the dome.
Right.
You go to
Right.
Pittsburgh, you're practicing outside, you're playing a game. If it's 20 degrees outside, that's what the game time temperature is. So, those are some of the things that really I laughed about with Coach Cower before, because I would always point to the indoor facility. I said, Coach, you do know we have an indoor? He said, oh, you got spoiled in Detroit. I said, you're right, Coach. I did. I really did.
Yeah, well, going home was certainly a good thing for you in terms of the longevity, the success, the experiences that you had with the Steelers, and you're still involved in the organization. Representing the organization, you're doing media work, you're an entrepreneur, and of course, the foundation that you started, the Best of the Batch Foundation, which had its beginnings in Detroit when you were here. You've taken to Pittsburgh and what you're doing in the community with that foundation. Tell us a little bit about that, because I've seen, pictures and videos of the facility and some of the programming, the things that you do to give back in that community.
Yes, it is, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think, for me, it was started when I was at Eastern Michigan in 1996. I lost my sister to senseless gang violence, as she was caught in crossfire between rival gangs, and the guy that she was with used her as a body shield. And my sister was only 17 years old, and Danielle never had an opportunity to live life. And I said at that moment, if I was ever to give back, I would. And I tried to do something in my family that's never been done. I was graduating from college. I did that in 1997. And then hopefully being drafted by one of those 32 teams, and didn't know where that was going to be. Drafted by Detroit in 1998. And immediately after that season, January of 1999 is when we started the Best of the Batch Foundation. And we did some one-off programs when I was up there in Detroit, working with the Community Relations Department. Kim French, now last name now is Kim Dover Spike. So working with the Community Relations, and of course Risa Balaam up there as well, it was a very good near dear friend for me. That I get a chance to work with every day, and I love her to death. She's like a sister to me. So I think, being able to do those programs in Detroit, and then obviously as I navigated here in Pittsburgh, I got it back in Pittsburgh in 2002, and I thought it would be my only season here. And from there, as we redirected the foundation goals, it was important to create programming here. And we started doing so, and did so. We started with a basketball league. We had 125 kids and 100 volunteers. And from there, the program grew, and the basketball program was the 300 kids, and we over 200 volunteers. So it was we were on to something, but our focus always stayed on education. And from there, in order to play in the basketball league, you need to attend 4 mandatory study halls in order to play, and needed to read a book in order to participate. So that's why we kept kids focused on just education, at least our reading programs throughout the course of the summer. And then ultimately, as we evolved in our programming and we focused on our reading computer literacy programs and our STEAM programs, it was something that we knew we were on to something as we continued to grow. And we had our office space. We ended up getting office space in 2004 here. These obviously, as my seasons increased here in Pittsburgh. And then we actually had our office building, which was 5,300 square feet. Everything that we did was within that program. And then here we are moving forward, and we had visions of expanding. And I'm sitting there, me and my wife were talking, and she's like, "How can we continue to grow?" And then ultimately, we were able to grow from 5,300 square feet to 33,000 square feet. And we opened up April of this year, and we did a ribbon cutting, which was beautiful, and of course, in all in memory of my sister. But to be able to do so and now service 3,800 kids annually in 9 counties throughout southwestern PA is beautiful. We're humbled. We're grateful for all the support that we have throughout, because we don't do this by ourselves. And if I told you that I've said that I would do this by myself, I would be lying to you. Mm-hmm. And to see where we are now, 25 years later, and to be home, to be able to do so in my hometown, and it's humble, and we're grateful for all the support that we have.
Well, and what you've been able to do, I mean, as a kid growing up, there yourself, these kinds of opportunities, I'm guessing, largely were not there. You might have had some people in your life that were important to you, that were helpful along the way, maybe outside your immediate family, but these kinds of opportunities that you're providing have to be so meaningful to so many of these kids.
It really is, and we run 13 different programs throughout a calendar year. And in our area, we don't have a Boys and Girls Club, we don't have a YMCA, so there's not much there for after school for these kids to go to. So we knew it was important. So when you're putting those things together, you understand how important it is for these kids because a lot of them depend on school for breakfast and lunch. And when school's canceled, guess what? They have nothing to eat.
Mm.
And these are things. So when schools close, our building stays open. And we are here. We're making sure that we are a resource, and we work directly with the school districts around the southwestern PA. So we deal with over 25 different school districts throughout. So we understand, what they're looking for. We're just trying to now be an extension of that. And when you're able to do so and provide the programs, you add stability. The kids trust you. They walk through those doors. You never know what story you're going to get. And it doesn't matter if it's a elementary or a middle school kid that's walking through. Maybe it's a high school kid trying to figure out what life looks like after he graduates or he or she graduates. So there are many different stories that walk through our door. And it takes a village, and we're trying to continue to do so. And a lot of that, for people who want to follow, they can go to batchfoundation.org, and you can see all of the programs that we run throughout a calendar year. And we love to collaborate because we don't do all things well. So whatever that may look like, if there's a vision of yours and we can help, bring that to light, we're more than happy to do so, and we don't need any credit for it.
All right, so you mentioned the tragedy involving your sister, and in memory of her, this kind of effort. But a lot of professional athletes are great about giving back. Okay, but not everyone does. All right, you've done it there. Who planted the seed initially? I mean, who is it that made Charlie Batch as a young man, as a kid, growing into adulthood? Who planted that seed to say, hey, you've got to do this, to help others? Maybe not this specifically, but you have to give back. You have to help others who follow. Who's responsible for that in your life?
Yeah, that was my mother. My
Mm.
mother, she was the one that always embedded everything. She knew I was gifted as a kid in sports, but she always made sure that I focused on the educational piece, and it was important that way. And she always reminded me of that. And then, of course, you have a lot of coaches that are a part of your life that have been very instrumental in the development and making sure that they're able to help you grow, not just on a sports field, but grow as a man and what this life looks like and entails. That they're trying to instill life lessons into you. So I've been able to be able to absorb that into my job. I just want to make sure that I continue to give back and pour into others the same way that people have poured into us, because it's just so important. Because when you trust somebody and you believe in what they're doing, you never know how that can shape a young kid's life. And I'm a testimony of that, of people pouring into me.
Yeah. I guess last thing would be, again, going back to your time here in Detroit, you mentioned Kim Doverspike and Risa Belayam. People that the public doesn't necessarily know, but they're so impactful in your life. How about some of the former teammates or others who helped you become the player and the person that you are during your time here in Detroit and Michigan? Maybe a few of those and what they've meant to Charlie Batch.
Yeah, there's collectively, there's a lot. I mentioned Risa, I mentioned Kim. You do have Bill Keenis, who was there for so long. You have Joe Brecknagel, who was a trainer. You have Kim Falb, who was a longtime trainer that was there. So when you see all of these names and people that has conversations and trying to figure out what that looks like, and it started with Bill Keenis, quite frankly, because Bill actually he was from Pittsburgh,
Mm.
and his time here and being able to share those stories and being able to say no. Here's how to do things the right way. You kind of, you appreciate that as you move forward, because you never forget, the people that you talk to over the years. And when I walk into the organization again, you're seeing, those people and you're thanking them. And I'm truly thanking them for saying, man, I didn't realize it then, but I know it now.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you just kind of continue to carry that on. But for me, one of the biggest names for me from Eastern Michigan alumni was a guy by the name of Anthony Snoddy. And Anthony Snoddy was my mentor when I got to Eastern. And I still talk to him almost, 30 years later. And the support and the belief that he has in me, I'm truly grateful for. And he's just like, no, I wanted to continue pushing you because I wanted to make sure that you were moving the needle, not getting complacent on where you were in life. And ultimately seeing him and still having the opportunity to see him, thank him, see him when I get to Michigan. Those are things that, I don't take for granted. And it's just, there's a lot more people out there that I, could talk about when it comes to it. But these are things, for me, I'm just grateful for. And there's, we do have a Lions group that we always talk about in the Lions group chat. So I still keep up with a lot of the former guys. I see Barry Sanders every once in a while playing golf, so we get a chance to, chop it up a little bit there. But it's just really, really cool to be able to see. And of course, I see Herman Moore. He's doing his thing as well. So I just, for me to be able to do it and just kind of say, hey, here's what we're doing in Pittsburgh. But again, it's not a lot of things that you're celebrating because we didn't accomplish team goals together. So you're not being brought back in the light of that, which is different in Pittsburgh because you're celebrating Super Bowl teams. And those are things that you never can take for granted. So, regardless of what that is, I'm just grateful for everybody who had played a part in my life and having the opportunity. And every time I see him, I say thank you. And they're like, you don't have to thank me. I said, but I am because I truly mean it.
Yeah, good for you. All right. Hold on one second as we mention our sponsor, once again, Charlie Batch joining us on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. Sherm's Candy, our sponsor, have a sweet tooth and a love for Michigan. Sherm's Candy is the perfect place to satisfy both. They specialize in delicious candies, all shaped like the Mitten State itself. Choose from classic Misha gummies for a delightful taste of gummy goodness, or if you're looking for a richer flavor experience, indulge in decadent chocolate Misha gummies. And for those who prefer a tart and tangy treat, pucker up for sour Misha gummies. Sherm's Candy doesn't forget about your furry friends either. They offer Misha Pups, a tasty treat made just for dogs. Many fine retailers across Michigan carry Sherm's Candy, or you can order online at shermscandy.com. Charlie Batch, former Lions quarterback, longtime Steelers quarterback, and two-time Super Bowl winner with the Steelers, joining us on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. All right, so the playoffs. What do you see in your crystal ball going forward? Lions and the Commanders. Of course, in the AFC, the Chiefs have been, I guess, and remain the team to beat. But what does Charlie Batch see in the crystal ball?
Yeah, it's funny because I mentioned the group chat that we're on, right? And a lot of my guys that two of my favorite teammates have Ron Rice and then of course Robert Porcher, who took me under my wing when I was a young guy. So we sit back and we laugh and all of those good things, and talking about what they're expecting and what we're hoping for. So now you kind of go from the fan mode. You're just when you hear. Don't take it for granted. You throw the records out the door. You could turn around and say, yeah, you might have a 10-7 team or whatever the case may be. It's like, no, any given team can turn around and get hot at the right time. So if you're not taking teams for granted, you're going out there handling your business. I don't see how the Lions, I can obviously they've turned the football over, but sure. I can't see them at home, turning around everything that they work for, giving this up. And I think ultimately I see Detroit is going to continue to play their best ball. And I think they're going to be in New Orleans. I think they're going to have a solid chance there, not, as far as what they're looking to bring to the equation. So it's going to be an exciting time this postseason.
Yeah, it sure is. Hey, Charlie, appreciate this so much. Great to catch up. Appreciate your time. Continue to do the work that you're doing to help your community and those kids in your community. You're making a difference each and every day. Thanks for the time and continued best of luck to you.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun talking Lions and anything NFL. So appreciate the time.
All right, Charlie. Thank you so much. Charlie Batch joining us on the Dave LewAllen Podcast today. We always want to thank our producer director, Josh Bowen, and most of all, you for listening or watching the Dave LewAllen Podcast. And until next time, stay safe, be kind. The Dave LewAllen Podcast is sponsored by Sherm's Candy, a Michigan-based company that specializes in awesome tasting candy that's in the shape of Michigan.